Okay. Morning, afternoon. It's only just afternoon, isn't it? So. Oh, we got lovely. Good. So it's always nice and easy and gently as you start off, and give yourself time and the space to settle in, loosen up. My usual routine of just paying careful attention to our posture. Working from your feet upwards. Just feel the weight of your body in your feet, and then see if you can adjust where the weight is in your feet. If you're back in the heels, you'll be sort of pulled backwards, and it's quite a sort of lazy posture in a way. When you're a little bit forwards, it helps to just open up the back, gives you that slight bit of forwards momentum. The problem there is, of course, you are struggling against the pull of gravity. So let that neutralize by just letting your hips drop back. And that way, it's just a little movement, and you retain that sort of open, energetic feeling going up your back at the same time as feeling quite settled. This kind of feeling you want is that with just a slight nudge forwards, then it will be quite easy to take a step. So almost enough energy to take a step with. Weight stays in the front half of your feet. So I sometimes say to people, 70% of your weight in that front half of your foot. So the posture remains alert, energetic, and that has an impact on your awareness. I'm sure we've all had the experience of sitting down in a comfortable chair for 5 minutes and then waking up half an hour later. And if you are feeling a bit sleepy, then don't sort of think, well, I shouldn't feel like that. It's quite natural to feel like that sometimes. But just recognize that your postures and your movement will, to some degree, ease that. What you might find is that if you are starting off a bit sleepy, is that at the end of the class, you do actually have a little sleep or something like that if you're not doing anything else. So your knees are soft. There's a little ball tucked in behind each knee there, as though you're holding a little ball in the front of each hip. But that's sometimes an idea that is extended to all of the joints of the body, elbows, shoulders, the joints of your fingers, and so on, so that the actual outline of the joint, you see, if I show you here, there on that finger, you see it's slightly curved, and that curve forms part of an imaginary circle. So there's that just eases the pressure on the joint, but it will also encourage the muscles of the joint or associated with the joint to work harder, because once you've taken away that support of the joint by softening them, something's got to take over, and it will be the muscles. And there are certain muscles associated with certain joints. So with the knees, for instance, it's the quadriceps, this big set of muscles at the front of the thighs in particular. All of the muscles of the leg will engage, but we feel it first of all in the quads. Hips dropping back. A slight feeling of overhanging in lower back, hips and buttocks. And roughly speaking, you want to feel as though your knees are over the balls of your feet, but your hips, because the top of the leg goes slightly back, more over your ankle. In some of the postures, we can take a deeper stance, but for this one, especially at the beginning, we don't try to do that. feel what's happening in your lower back. There's some big muscles there. In fact, right the way up the back, there's a big network of muscles going various planes up and down at a slant, horizontally. And you can maybe feel those going around to your rib cage, chest. Don't pull your belly in. There's a definite muscle tone there, but generally speaking, the muscle tone that we're looking for all the muscles is going to be an elastic, soft muscle tone. So the soft tissue of the body is quite firm, but never rock hard, never tight, ideally. As you turn, the rib cage is moved, the shoulders are moved, and that just swings your arms quite naturally. So, for instance, if you put a hand here on the front of your shoulder, you'll feel the muscles there extending out and then contracting in. So that also adds a bit of momentum to your arms. Raise your arms a little bit, get them to a comfortable height, and then you start off with the hands palm up, but just go through the routine. Rotate your arms inwards, so it's the whole arm, not just the wrist, and then downwards, and then if you can to the side, just as far as you can go. It's not a precise thing. The idea being that what you can do is rotate your arms as you swing and just feel the changes. I feel it mostly in the sides of the body, but there's a difference between hands palm up and palm down. It's almost impossible to move one part of the body in complete isolation because your whole body is connected by muscle, tendon, ligament, and by the fascia, the muscle skin that runs continually underneath the main skin all the way through your body. And this is very much a feature of Tai Chi. We say that when one part of your body is in motion, your whole body is in motion, your whole body is engaged in one way or another. I put one foot forwards and just moving your weight forwards and backwards, and at the same time letting your body turn. The most obvious, the most natural way to turn would be to turn towards the direction that your feet are pointing. We can move in other directions, but for the moment I don't want to. But what you may do is find that as you go back, you'll turn in the other way. This could be because of a stiffness. I mean, so for instance, if I go back and my hip and my knee are stiff, rather than force itself into my leg, my body will just turn that way. It will just move around the obstruction, which is a very Tai Chi approach. So don't force the movement, but if you are finding that you're turning the other way, have a little think about it. What's causing that? It could be that you're sort of like interfering with it in a way too much, or it could be that there's that physical block there, and you should go very carefully with that. Don't force your way into it. Change over. So this gives us the combination of weight transfer and turning in the center of the body, and that moves your arms. And in very simple terms, that's how the connections are made in the body: feet to legs, to hips and waist, and finally to our arms. And in all of these faster exercises, we can experience a nice sense of rhythm and flow, things that we want to try and bring into the slower movements. It'll be a bit more difficult there. And shake out. Now, feet hip width apart. And I said about the weight being forwards in the feet, but we're going to change that for for a moment, just rocking to and fro, pivoting on your ankles, so not letting your toes and your heel come up off the ground. Just contrasting the feeling of our body when our weight is further back in our heel to when it's further forwards, and feeling the change through the arch of the foot. That the big muscles in the base of the foot, feeling almost as though they're being massaged. As you move, then just feeling your hips moving, and then your ribs moving, and then your shoulders moving. Hands just gently against the sides of your body, fingers forward. So now, as you move, imagine various images you could use: carrying a tray of drinks, pushing a supermarket trolley is another one. For something a little bit stronger, you imagine there's sort of something soft like mud, or the wall of a bouncy castle, or something in front of you. And as you go in, you're just pressing your fingers in and pulling out. Just something that, some kind of idea that gives you a sense of function, sense of intent in your arms. Just feeling how your body provides the movement, the energy for that. And going forwards, this time, if you imagine carrying the tray of drinks, now there's a table in front of you, and very carefully using that forward energy to push your elbows forwards. So you're putting the tray on the table and then going back. So the movement is rooted in the feet, with the sinking of our weight, the movement of our weight, transmitted through our legs, controlled by the center of the body, expressed in our arms. So you could, for instance, turn. Here we see how the center of the body is controlled. It's controlling rather our arms, our hands. This is all done without shaking our hands around, without spilling the drinks on the tray. So we use that image, and we use the image as all images to program the body, to make it move in a particular way. So now bring your hands down as though you're cradling the ball. This time you go forward, wait until you've got that feeling of 70%, 2/3 of your weight in the front half of your feet. And at that point, just let your hips drop back a little bit more, sinking down and pushing up. And sinking down. So we've changed from a horizontal to a vertical movement. The same principles apply. And as we go through the slower exercises, just recall that feeling of rhythm and flow in the movement that you experience with those. Always going to be harder to maintain that as we go through the slower movements. On the other hand, because we're going slowly, what you may find is that there are certain points where we definitely don't feel that. So maybe as you sink back, if you're a bit stiff in your back, if there's a little bit of kind of tightness there, that will block it. Same in the shoulders, it could be anywhere. And so what we do is we gradually begin to identify those areas that are blocking this movement. And then we start to think about, what do we need to do about it? Sometimes it's just a matter of waiting for the movement itself to do its job, as it were, and actually ease the area. sometimes we might want to think, well, if it's your lower back, for instance, we know that the pelvis tucks under, but it can be very tempting to end up doing something like this that will put pressure in the lower part of the back. So you can just change it, just push the hips back a little bit and those kind of things. So we start to generate as much as possible a flowing movement all the way through our body, from feet to fingertips, the crown of the head. So the actual movement itself also helps with this feeling of connection. It's one movement with all of the exercises. Just see if you can feel that. I'm going to bring your attention back to that a little bit later, but for now, change into wild goose. Here, the image of the bird in flight can add another dimension to the movement, the flow, the grace, but also if you get a feather and wave it up and down in the air, feel the way that the feather responds to the thickness of the air. And in the same way, we want particularly our arms, but our whole body to respond like that, both to things like the pull of gravity, the upward movement that comes out of that, but also to the resistance of the air around us. It doesn't always feel as though there's resistance to the air, but if you've ever got on a bike and just cycled off, you soon feel that the air seems to be a bit thicker, and that's what we look for in Tai Chi. This time change into parting the clouds. Let your hands come down and cross in front of your belly, and then push up, gently extending out. So gradually what we do is largely through the use of imagery, but also making sure our posture and movement are correct, is change how we move in ordinary terms. If we imagine, for instance, moving through water, so we imagine the air being that thick, we develop both the connectivity in our body, but we also strengthen that connectivity. We strengthen the tissues of the body as well. So we can get to a point where this is the way that we move generally, more connected, more smooth, stronger. And then change in dragon plucks the stars from the sky, extending through one side, wind your hand around and pull down. So the images can be a very rich source of information, if you like, and change within the movements. But we need to be careful that they don't become a distraction, that whatever we pick up from the images feeds in deliberately to our body and our movement and to our mind. Some of them, like this one, sort of have references in a way to sort of Chinese mythology and folk tales. The dragon is a very important character in Chinese folk tales, different to the Western dragon. It has a more serpent-like quality to it. And if you start thinking of that, it's worth having a look in books on Chinese folk tales or have a look on the internet. But don't get so distracted that when you're doing the movement, you're thinking a lot about the dragon. We use the image to feed in to our body and mind. One more time on each side. how we observe the movement, how we think about the movement makes a difference to the movement itself. Just bring your hands to your sides and push out sideways and turn. We'll add the rest of the movement to this set in a moment. But try not to think of this as two movements, or more than two perhaps. The expansion and the turn are both movements that originate in the center of the body. So that's where a primary focus of our attention is. We turn and expand. We turn and contract. Turn and expand. We turn and contract. It's the expansion that pushes our arms out. It's the turning that directs them. If we start thinking, I could do this with the hand and this with the hip, or so on and so forth, the movement will fragment. But if we can focus our attention into the center of our body, between hips and waist, and from there down into the ground, we have this sort of common denominator of all of the movements, and we begin to recognize that the movements start there and finish there. So this is a good exercise to develop that quality. And then pushing in four directions. So you push up. So remember those moments, whether in the faster exercises or maybe in one of the earlier exercises, where you did feel that quality of connection. And if it feels a bit disjointed in this exercise at the moment, and it's tricky for you to sort of focus on the correct part of the body, maybe for some reason you keep sliding off, then it can be helpful just to recall how it felt before. And in a sense, what you're doing is you're giving the instruction to your body, this is what I want. And our bodies are often very, very responsive to those kind of functions of the mind and the brain, nervous system. We do a lot each day, which starts with our intent that we don't have to deliberately and consciously think about. Tying shoelaces, making a cup of tea, even going and answering your phone or opening the door. These are all familiar patterns. And we recall them. And our body follows the memory. So the memory of the quality of the movement and the benefits of that can be enough to stimulate the body to move in the way that we want it to. Last time. And then pushing one arm out to the side, letting it swing up until it's in line with your nose, straight down. As much as it's comfortable, pressing outwards slightly with the palm of your hand, the heel of the palm. And then add in the turn. Feel how that affects the movement. You shouldn't feel a tightening in your upper back or your shoulder when you do that. because the turn is from the center of the body. If you watch, see how my hand moves. We lose that focus of attention very, very easily. So it's very easy to do something like this. You see here, my hand isn't moving. Now it's twisting up my back. So I'm going to stop doing that. And then switch sides. So if we want to move with that sense of the whole body moving at one point, then feet, legs, and center of the body are the places we need to bring our attention back to each time. Remind ourselves that that is, in one sense, I suppose you could say, the source of the movement, or at least the governing area of the movement. And again, if it's comfortable, the turn. And then rowing a boat in the middle of the lake, still aware of what's happening in the center, because this time as we sink down, hips will go back, so our center rotates vertically and then returns. Just be aware of the feelings in your knees and your back. Again, we don't want to tighten in. If you feel that you want to go further, it's really to do with your hips going back, and just time and practice to keep doing this, and give plenty of time for the muscles, particularly of your back, to open out a little bit and to strengthen up. Don't force it at any point. One more time. Next movement combines both vertical and horizontal circling in the center of the body, polishing the table. You turn and then push the hips back. Hands stay roughly level with your hips the whole time. So if you imagine them resting on the table, this movement would push them forwards, and the hips dropping back would bring them back. See there, turn, push my hips back, swing round, come back, and I'm here. One more time. And then let your hands drop down. I'm sure we can all find many examples of how our mind, our intent, what's going on in our mind is dictates to our body or encourages our body to move in a certain way. If you've ever sort of gone say to visit a friend who's moved to the next street or something like that, and you've been to the new house maybe half a dozen times, and one day you're just strolling along, and you're not really thinking about it, and you automatically walk down the original street. And there's many examples of that. If you decide to change the cupboards around in your kitchen, then sometimes you'll find yourself going to the wrong cupboard, because that pattern of movement is kind of deep in your memory, and think, well, I want a cup, and it's like, oh no, I moved them over there. That kind of thing. So how how our minds relate to our body on a kind of subconscious and unconscious level can have a massive influence. So if we habitually lose a sense of focus on what's happening in the middle of our body and down in to our feet, then we cease to move properly from that part of the body. And that's something that can happen very easily, especially if you spend a lot of time sitting down, driving, or working at a computer or something like that. Those kind of things can be very, very influential, shall we say, or dictatorial almost, in just how we regard our bodies. And the consequences of that can be quite sort of dramatic. If I want to move this bottle from in front of me, if I move it from the top of the bottle, it does that. It falls over very, very easily. If I move it from the bottom, which it will fall over now. No, there you go. If I move it from the bottom, it's much more stable. So simply not being aware of what's happening in our feet and our hips, and not being aware of what's happening in our weight, means that we lose some kind of ownership of it. Tai Chi looks to correct that. So we focus our attention on our feet and our legs, but also in the center of the body. This part of the body, sometimes referred to as the lower dantian, is like the hub of a bicycle wheel. When the hub turns, everything is moving, all the spokes, the rim of the wheel, the tire, and so on and so forth, from that one thing. Now put one foot forwards and begin to roll your weight forwards and backwards. We can't emphasize that point and its value enough, because obviously there's a physical value here, but also for the mind as well, because the center of the body and the feet are more settled, more grounded, more centered, literally centered. And those are the qualities that offer us this very deep sense of calmness for the mind. So it's very important to train your attention, and this is where the Tai Chi and Qigong exercises really rank as moving meditations. They simply don't work as well when not engaged. This is not a trance-like art. We're not trying to be somewhere else. We're not using the images to pretend that we're a bird flying. We know that we're not, but that doesn't mean that we can't take some of those ideas and some of those qualities that the idea of a bird flying offers us to integrate into our movement. And those efforts on the part of the mind really encourage a sense of presence in this particular moment. So there's the calmness. There's also that sense of not being in the kind of stream of your thoughts so much, not running downhill and concerned with all the other details of our lives, not as a rejection of them, but simply just stepping back from them for the period of practice. Beginning to raise your toes and your heel. There's another element to this, which is that once we've begun to focus our attention in this way from moment to moment, our ability to do that improves. We're actually able to, what is sometimes referred to as concentrate, but it's more about gathering and focusing here. We don't get so easily distracted. And there is always a part of our attention that is in our body. And there are many benefits to that as well. We get a deeper sense of calmness. We're also more aware of things happening outside our body, things happening inside our body. So we can begin to work with whatever changes are happening. Stepping in. I find that there's a very direct relationship between my ability to be stable on one leg like this, for instance, with my ability to focus on my foot. And if I do get to a point in here and I'm kind of wobbling around, what I'm trying to do here is to drop my hips, but also to drop my attention into my foot. So if I'm a bit scatty this morning, I'll be less stable. And then on the other side, all of these states are capable of changing, and all of these states are trained by the practice that we do. I often describe this in terms of a gentle push from one foot to another, but you can also imagine if you were sitting on these big blue balls you get in gyms, for instance, and you were squatting down on one of those and the ball rolled forwards, then it would take your weight forwards, and when the ball rolled back, it would take your weight back. So again, we have that idea of a vertical rotation in the center of the body. Raising your toes and your heel. And if you want to take that image a little bit further, if it works for you, then that ball is rolling and then it drops downwards like a golf ball dropping into a hole. So we get to here and we drop. And these little things become habitual for us. And then stepping in. And then step through, take a few steps in one direction or another. Coming into the center with your foot before you go out. This is very characteristic again of how movements work in Tai Chi. There's a contracting stage that we would refer to as yin, followed by an expanding stage we would refer to as yang. And then back. The overall idea is to have the balance between yin yang, but some exercises will emphasize one over the other in some instances, or we might choose to focus on one particular aspect. If we do that, then the first thing we should focus on is the yin aspect, the drawing in, because we need that in order to push out. I need to be here before I can be here. And shake out. So all of these things are part and parcel of the jigsaw. It's like a big three-dimensional jigsaw. And if one part of the jigsaw is missing, then it doesn't feel right. The picture is incomplete. We lose the flow, we lose the rhythm, we lose that sort of internal quality. And so when we do that, there's a reminder there. Oh, something's changed. A piece of the jigsaw has dropped out. And what we would actually do in those circumstances in Tai Chi is always, first of all, checking feet, checking hips, checking the center. They're most likely to be the root of the problem. Not always, but we work always from the ground up. So bring your hands, sorry, bring your weight back into your feet, bring your hands to your belly. When we start to do this, I want you to remember that feeling of carrying the tray of drinks. Actually, in fact, let's start it like that. But again, put your elbows against your sides and just begin to transfer your weight forwards and backwards with the same idea of carrying the tray of drinks. And then just carefully, though you're going to rest the tray on a table, and pick it up from the table. And just for the experience, be careful with this. We'll go forward and just keep pushing your arms out and out and out. And you can see my shoulders are being pulled forwards. Sooner or later, I'm going to go. Or you could just go, okay, so this, you could just throw the tray down or something like that. And the thing is that if we give the wrong sort of consideration, too much consideration to what our arms are doing, then the whole movement goes wrong. The further our arms get out from our body, the more likely it is to compromise our posture, our movement, our stability, and so on. And just try this. Turn your front foot out a little bit, come forwards, bring your back foot in, and as you do, bring your hands back. Step with that same quality of carrying the tray of drinks. So it feels as though it's almost like a piece of elastic attached to your back foot, coming right up through your body, into your fingers, and then contracting in. One movement through the whole of your body. Drawing in, pushing out, yang. Try that going back. Continual smooth movement, working through the whole of your body. So now right foot forwards, hold your hands over your belly. Push forwards into pigeon spreads its wings. Don't think, oh, I'm going to put my hands here or here or here or whatever. Try and remember that quality of movement, of the whole body in movement. And just have that as your principal intent behind the movement. This is how you want your body to move. One more time. And then your hands drop down and they hang down next to your hips. Your hips move forwards, leaving your hands behind for a moment, and then they get drawn through. Remember when we were turning and I got you to put your hand just in front of your shoulder to feel which parts of your body were engaging with the movement. You do the same thing again. Just have one hand, you could feel, say, what's happening in your chest, maybe the top of your shoulder. Details like that get absorbed into our overall awareness and intent. Now changing to push and wave, bring your hands in front of your hips and push forwards. Don't lift your hands, just let the shape of your arm and the forward movement swing your arm up. So don't do this or deliberately move up. It's a curving movement through and up. Just let your hands follow the curve. So these first three movements we've done in this posture are very much forwards and backwards. Our hips and our shoulders, our center facing forwards. But now we come back, you turn to your right, and that redirects our arms. We still have the expansion and contraction, the rhythm, the flow of the movement. So we sink down in the back leg, we feel the push up that expands outwards through the sides of our body. Once again, our arms rise up, basically because they're attached at one end to your shoulder. You wouldn't be able to just keep moving your hand forwards or backwards in that direction without restriction, unless you could somehow stretch your arm out like a piece of plastic, a piece of elastic. So the question of lifting our arms isn't one that we have to address. We're very smooth in your shoulders. This is wind blows the willows. And this time, use that turn in to raise your back heel, bring your foot in. Step back, put the foot down here. As I turn, that helps to raise my toes and bring my foot in. You see, once again, the significance of that center part of the body and the way it relates to other parts of the body, particularly our feet, legs. You may even find, if you can maintain the focus of your attention, you can raise the leg, perhaps even rotate it. Both of those are quite tricky movements. So don't start thinking too much about your leg, because if you do that, you start to wobble around. You lose the focus on your foot, and your weight dropping down. Our capacity to notice things, to be aware of things, increases with practice. Okay, shake out. So, pigeon spreads its wings. Remember the quality of the movement. Use an image like moving through water. Imagine the air around you thicker, like it would be if you were riding a bike, like it would feel if you were riding a bike. So you feel that sense of flow within the body. Perhaps not only moving through water, but moving like water, feeling the quality of the movement like a wave coming through your body. If that's a useful image to you, don't forget the wave doesn't just come from the back foot pushing forwards. Round about here, it drains away into the front leg. Otherwise, the wave will push you over. And then fisherman cast a net. The last part of your body to swing forwards is going to be your fingertips, shoulders, elbows come through, wrists, and finally your fingers. Try not to do this. And then pushing wave. You can imagine the wave both pushing the hands forwards, pushing your body forwards and sinking down into the front leg, but also pushing against the wave. So there's another aspect that we bring into Tai Chi, which is not just an awareness of what's happening within our body, but also what's happening in the environment around us. And then wind blows the willows, you sink back and you turn. Make sure you settle yourself in your supporting leg for the rotation. Remember, you don't have to think about lifting your hands. You want the expansion to push your hands outwards. Your elbows remain soft. And your arms will just quite naturally swing up to a comfortable height. And then stepping in. When we go slowly, we go forwards, just about here. There's always a moment when we feel ourselves dropping in. We program ourselves to always do that. And then maybe we can raise the foot. Forwards, sink, turn. Oops. And that's what we do when we find ourselves wobbling. Try not to flap around, but settle down again. So when we learn to settle down here, we may lose it coming to here, but we've already done it once, so we know that we can do it again. And then step through, dragonfly skims the water. And in the other direction. Sink. And bring a big power. Shake out. These are simple ideas, but they're not easy to do. And I think in particular, that idea that, you know, when you're on one leg and you get a bit wobbly, you need to sink. And effectively, what you're asking yourself to do, what you're asking your mind and your body to do, is to relax. That's a very difficult thing. We have an inbuilt and really quite useful antipathy to falling over. We don't want to fall over all the time. And because we can hurt ourselves, and we're meant to be vertical and so on and so forth. So to relax under those circumstances is actually very, very difficult. What I recommend to people, if you're, even if, well, I could say if you're having problems, I don't think it is just about having problems. So I think we all have a lot to learn from this. Here, I just put my hand on the wall. I think, well, okay, so I'm kind of a bit wobbly now. I'm confident because I've got my hand on the wall that I could just do that. I could save myself from falling. So what I want to try and do here is, can I get from this wobbly position to this? And I know that, you know, I'm going to do this as sometimes I'll get it right, sometimes I get it wrong. I've got the wall there to support me. So when I get it wrong, I've got something I can hold on to. I'm not going to fall over, and so I'm more likely to be able to get that sense of relaxation and focusing in those moments. At that point, of course, once I'm able to do that, the confidence that I generate in doing that will begin to have an impact on the rest of my movements. Then one day you'll find, as I did one day, you slip or you trip or something like that, and instead of falling over, you just quite naturally do this because you programmed it in to your body and mind. You programmed that response, and you changed your response from a very common response and understandable, which is flapping around, to this quieter, more settled, more stable quality. And you know, we find examples of that in lots of different ways. It's about the mind as well as the body. So rubbing your hands together now, and then tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder and your arm. Other side. Your back. And around your hips. Right on your belly. And then the upper half of the chest. Shake out. Good. So coming back now with, and this exercise is definitely an emphasis on, if you like, the yin, the drawing in, embrace tiger, return to mountain. This is really what I was just talking about. As we push up and out, we know now that if our hands extend too far, as they get further away from the body, we may lose that stability, that quality of the movement. And yet at the same time, we realize that there's a way back. Again, I'd emphasize it's not all about the sinking down. You've heard it said that this exercise, embrace tiger, return to mountain. The tiger represents the just everyday life, energetic, often very beautiful, but perhaps a little bit wary of things sometimes. The mountain is this image of quietness and stillness and strength. One just naturally leads us to the other, because as we sink down, sooner or later we reach a point where we start to push out again. And stand. And shake out. Thank you very much, everybody.